Good morning, I'm Jeff Stauffer, and thanks for joining us for another edition of our Elville webinar series. It's Friday, March 28th, all day, and our topic is one we bring back once a year, Achieving Perfection for Your Legacy, Intentionalism in Estate Planning. And there's no one better to take us through this discussion than our Managing Principal and Lead Attorney, Stephen Elville. A few brief housekeeping items as we get started. We always encourage your general questions, so please note them in the questions panel. They always add a lot of value to the presentation, so thanks in advance. And you also received the presentation slides Steve will be referencing by email yesterday. If you didn't receive that for some reason, they're available in the section marked handouts on your screen to download at this time. And we have some professionals on today's webinar. Thanks for being here. We offer 1.5 continuing education hours for attending. So if I don't have your accreditation or an ID number, please send that over to me so I can get your hours posted. And we also always send out a post-webinar feedback email right after the presentation. Please take just a minute or two to fill this brief and important survey out and let us know how we did today. And a question for you. Have you achieved your planning goals, or have those goals shifted since you last looked at your planning, which may have been a couple years or maybe 20 years at this point? Whatever it may be, starting from the beginning, looking at old documents, an administration matter, what have you, Steve and our team are here to help and advise and counsel you every step of the way. So we're gonna go through just a brief intro. I think a lot of people that are here today have been on our presentations, but always good to revisit who we are and what we do here. So we're Elville and Associates, founded in 2010 in Columbia by Steve. We have many different practice areas that we focus on here at the firm, including estate and special needs planning, elder law and elder care planning, estate and trust administration, business law and succession planning, guardianship and litigation, and tax planning and asset protection techniques. We have 11 attorneys, 12 staff members, and 3 locations, including our Columbia location here, our new Rockville location, and our Annapolis office is going right down the road from where it currently is. We're really happy with where we're going to be. Our mission, as it always has been and always will be, is to provide practical solutions to our clients' needs through counseling, education, and superior legal technical knowledge. And we focus on education a lot here at the firm, and we do that through our planning processes with our clients. And we have different programs to suit all families and individuals here at Elville and Associates. Also, we offer many educational webinars and workshops in the communities that we serve each year. And also by way of our accredited client care program, which is growing rapidly. We're one of only 2 firms in Maryland to have a client care program accredited by the Client Care Academy in Boston. And we also work with the ideals of client education, collaboration, and compassion in mind with every client every day here at Elville and Associates. And just a bit about Steve. His work as an attorney for many years has been centered in elder law, special needs planning, and estate planning. He's a member of many different national membership and professional organizations and epic peer groups throughout the country. He works to offer peace of mind to clients by creating solutions to their needs through counseling, client education, and the use of leading edge legal technical knowledge. And Steve is a very seasoned speaker and presenter, each year offering many webinars, workshops for businesses and their employees, conferences, and continuing education events. We're going to the Brain Injury Association of Maryland conference next week for the 11th consecutive year, so always enjoy being there and educating people and sharing information. Steve was also named to the Maryland Super Lawyers list for a 10th time and 9th consecutive year in 2025, so congratulations there, Steve. He also had a feature story written about him in the National Super Lawyers magazine about the Elville Center for the Creative Arts, which is our firm's charitable organization he founded in 2014. I'm very fortunate to be the director of. Please reach out to me if you'd like to learn how we work to make a musical difference in the lives of children each day, and I'll be very happy to share some great stories with you. For now, we have an interesting topic. Steve, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great, Jeff. I almost couldn't see you back in your office with all those instruments around you. Guitars.
There's a lot. We've got a dozen guitars for the Baltimore Classical Guitar Society. We have tenor saxes, we have cellos, all kinds of good stuff in here. And those are all getting ready to be delivered out.
You need a bigger car. You do.
I do need a bigger car, yeah.
The other thing I heard, Jeff, as you give me control of the screen, is I heard this morning from our head paralegal that she's heading down to Washington tomorrow morning, bright and early, to see the cherry blossoms. I heard it's going to be the best day of the year, according to her.
It is.
And, you know, I just wondered if you're going to be down there at like 6:30 a.m.
I will probably be waking up then and getting ready to go to the gym and taking my chain link fence down that is in my yard that is 50 years old, that is building my muscles up every day as I work on a little bit of that at a time.
All right. So now I
One
know
of
why
those
you
things to
invited
do.
me over. Okay, I know now. All right.
You're
All
happy,
right.
you're
Well,
welcome
thank
to
you.
help though. So,
Thank you. All right. Good morning, everyone. And Jeff, thank you so much for all you do and for your support and for being such a great moderator of our webinars. And good morning, everyone. I wanted to just say hello. I'm in conference room 1 here at Elville and Associates in Columbia, Maryland. I'm looking out my window here and I see blossoms on the trees, and it's springtime, and I hope that you and your family are doing well and enjoying the transition into spring. So it's a wonderful time of year, and we know the holiday, Easter and other holidays are coming up. So I do hope that you have the best day of the year tomorrow and the weekend, but today we're going to get into how to be intentional in your estate plan. And one of the things that's a little bit misleading in this introduction is this idea of achieving perfection. Now, we do want to achieve perfection, but we know that people that are perfectionists, and some of you may be perfectionists, sometimes trying to be a perfectionist is sometimes counterproductive, we could argue, and that's a different subject. Rather, I think that there are other traits or other types of effort that we could make, and these efforts are what is going to lead to perfection. In other words, it's going to be a process, as we've talked about many times. So we do want to be intentional. We do want to achieve perfection ultimately, but we want to do it in a way that's methodical and so forth. So Jeff, I'm just going to say that as we start out, that at the end of the presentation, we're going to give people the chance to maybe come up with what I would call the 2 most important words or the 2 most important aspects of this presentation, how to achieve perfection and being intentional. And I'll just give you a little bit of a clue, these 2 words. They are really the same, start with the same letter as my initials to my name. So we will just leave that out there. There's 2 words we're going to be looking for those people who really can catch the drift of what we're saying today. And the clue is that those words begin with the same letters as my initials. All right, so we'll have a little fun with that. Now, we're going to get into the discussion. Please ask questions. Jeff's an expert moderator. If you have questions, we will stop and take those. This is not legal advice in the sense of an attorney-client relationship. This is strictly high-level education, and we can always enter into an attorney-client relationship in our conference rooms or at another location, but this is educational only. And as we start to look at being intentional, I'm going to say that, some people would say that estate planning is easy. Estate planning is easy. All you have to do is have a few documents and that's it. And I would say that maybe that could be true if we did not have any elder care concerns, if we didn't have any tax concerns, if we didn't have any concerns for flexibility, if we didn't have any concerns for what happens if we have a loved one that may need a guardian someday. And we could go on and on and on about whether we are concerned about income tax or estate tax or inheritance tax or gift tax. If we had none of these concerns, or we didn't have concerns about children with special needs, people that are at risk, let's say they don't make good decisions, or if we didn't have any concerns about spouses and potentially having a spouse remarry and making sure that assets actually come down to our own children, or if we didn't have charitable intent, and we could go on and on. If we didn't have any of those issues in estate planning, then yes, it could be very simple. And I'll also throw out if we didn't have any concerns about incapacity planning and how much flexibility is provided and healthcare decision making. But we know that if we do have any of those concerns, we want to be very intentional, and it's not simple. So let's just get that out of the way. If we're going to have real planning, it's going to take being intentional. So we're going to talk about intentionality, why this is necessary in estate planning. We're going to understand the risks in estate planning. Of course, this is not exclusive, this risk list that I'm going to give you. So I want you to be proactive in your own notes, be proactive on your tablet or your Android or your iPhone, on your piece of paper that you're scratching down notes. Don't just take my word for it. Think about yourself and some of the risks that you may be considering in estate planning and in light of your own goals, your own intentions. Knowing what you want, why knowing what you want is very important. Knowing what your goals are. Avoiding failure in the planning. Now, obviously, that's what we're trying to avoid, but what are some of the flashing red lights out there, okay? Maintaining and updating your plan and the importance of being in a partnership with your planner. All right, let's get down to the fundamentals. I haven't updated this since 2020, but let's take a look at this. In Webster's dictionary, something that is intentional is something done by intention or design. And I've always found this interesting. This definition, as mundane as this may look at this last part of that definition. Something that's done intentionally or by design, having an external reference. This always kind of fascinated me. And you can tell right from the beginning now, I'm dragging you into the weeds here. I'm dragging you into a non-technical discussion. I'm dragging you into a philosophical discussion for a reason. And because this is so philosophical, I'm going to keep it moving, I promise. But look at that, having an external reference. So what could an external reference be in estate planning? Let's think about that for a minute. That is a process, if you ask me. So being intentional on purpose with a process. That's to me what this means, okay? If we look at it from an estate planning point of view. Now, what are synonyms to being intentional? Conscious, deliberate, intentional, obviously, knowing, and purposeful. All of us want to be that, right? So this whole presentation is challenging you to be those things with regard to estate planning. Look at the antonyms: unintentional and non-deliberate. Now, I know it sounds trite, but would any of us want an unintentional estate plan? It happens every day, I have to tell you. And your financial advisors and CPAs and life insurance specialists and aging life care managers can tell you every day people have unintentional consequences. Let's say right from the beginning, we're going to be intentional, we're going to be purposeful by design with an external reference to process. So we know that the definition of, let's say, being intentional in estate planning is a plan that is designed and done with conscious and deliberate intention. This is my words now. You're going to decide for yourself, with reference to an external process. Now, what's within your control? Well, your commitment is within your control, okay? And these are a few clues to those two key words that I'm going to leave you with at the end of the presentation. But that commitment is 100% within your control. Why do 55 to 65, let's say 55 to 62% of the US population have no planning? Well, we could argue they're not committed to planning, that's obvious, but we could also argue they're not educated. They don't know the importance of lifetime planning for incapacity, lifetime planning for taxes, death planning, and all that involved. So they're not committed. They don't have the knowledge or education. They don't have the urgency. So the commitment part is 100% within your control. And then participating in an organized process, I'm going to argue that's not really entirely in your control, because you have to seek out an estate planning law firm or a collaborative team, which I'm going to spend some time on this morning. You have to seek out those people, and that's not easy. So if you want to seek out a collaborative approach, you are in the right place this morning, or if you know someone else who's seeking that, because that's something that you really have to strive for. So the commitment's in your control. The organized process or the participation in that process is not 100% within your control, but you can reach that. Now, why do we want to be intentional? Well, you know this in your own life. Whether you're taking a trip, whether you're planning for retirement, whatever it may be, getting ready to go see the kids for the weekend, and there's plans that have to be made. Well, we just don't want to be random, do we? How many of you, when you were younger, you did lots of things that were random, and sometimes it was fun, and sometimes it worked out just fine, and sometimes it didn't. But in estate planning, randomness is a path to where? Well, it's a path to somewhere, but it's a path to a non-intentional outcome. We don't want that. We want to eliminate randomness. Now, the estate planning world looks a certain way. We don't have time to get into that this morning, but we know there are financial advisors and other collaborative professionals possibly on this webinar this morning. And the world of estate planning, the world of the US financial system and the delivery of services by financial advisors and tax services by CPA and other tax preparers and estate planning attorneys and other attorneys, we know that the delivery of these services comes in different varieties. You have the opportunity to choose who you will work with and make sure those people work together. And that is the beginning of how you eliminate randomness and being intentional, okay? So estate planning is an idea versus a transaction. Now, estate planning as an idea is what we're talking about this morning, a broad concept that is collaborative and broad, okay? If it's a transaction, we're back to the beginning of this presentation. Well, why do we need to be intentional? Well, it's so simple. Why do I need to be intentional? We mentioned at least 10 to 15 reasons why estate planning cannot usually be just so straightforward, that is so simple that you don't need to be intentional. So let's just get rid of this idea that estate planning is a transaction. The only way that I can see something like that really working is if I were getting ready to take a trip, I wanted to make sure I had my bases covered, or I was a person in a certain kind of phase of my life and I wanted to get some very quick documents in place. Very prudent thing to do, nothing wrong with that. But if we had our druthers, as my grandfather used to say, we would want to be intentional every single time. So we want to look at estate planning as an idea, as a process, and not a transaction. And we just talked about this in the prior bullet point, but the process versus life. You know, our life is a process. We go through phases, we go through health phases, we go through the loss of loved ones, unfortunately. We see loved ones having aging issues. We see children have issues. We see some of our children doing wonderfully well. So our life is a process and planning should be a process. Now, unfortunately, statistically, people will not have a plan at all. Or if they do have a plan, they won't maintain that plan and the plan can collapse. So let's just take all that randomness out, focus on the rest of the material here, and we will not be in that lane. We will be in a different lane toward being intentional. Now, again, we talked about this. Some people intentionally don't plan. They just can't face the reality of it. They can't talk about it. We want to somehow overcome that. Estate planning is an uphill climb. I've had some people tell me recently that their children were traveling around the world. They are hiking, they're hiking on the Appalachian Trail, or they're overseas going up a mountain somewhere. Estate planning is a process and it is a climb, okay? If we really want to look at it realistically, estate planning is the same process as our life. Our life is a series of challenges, so is estate planning. I think most of you on this webinar would probably agree with that, or you wouldn't be here today. So we want commitment and process, and without that, the last bullet point here, arguably, we have no chance of being successful other than just a random outcome. So we want to eliminate all that, and obviously that's what we're talking about this morning. So when you begin, I know a lot of people have talked about the concept of a good beginning, right? And a good beginning is a wonderful thing to think about, whether it's planting a garden, whether it's our child taking music lessons with the right teacher and getting off to a great start, or a great start to the school year, whatever it may be. We don't want a random beginning. We want a good beginning. But this is one of the big risks in estate planning, is if you or your loved one or your friend is not connected with the proper team or the proper estate planning firm, they may just get random information without a process, and that's not good. So we want to avoid that. Improper incapacity planning, okay? How many of you have heard someone say that all powers of attorney are the same, or that they are all plain vanilla? Well, nothing could be further from the truth. So powers of attorney are arguably the most important of all the estate planning documents, whether you are an attorney at Elville and Associates or another attorney in some state in the US, or the most elite of planners in the US. All of them would agree that the financial powers of attorney are the most important of all the documents. Improper planning for incapacity is possibly one of the reasons for failure. The healthcare directive, where you are avoiding guardianship of your person with having proper agents, this is one of the most fundamental things in estate planning. So understanding healthcare decision-making in Maryland or whatever state you live in is one of the most important things for proper incapacity planning. So that is a risk. Word processing is a risk. You or your friend or loved one go to an attorney and they are using documents from 2003 and they love those documents. They're still using them, and some of those documents might be okay, but let's say those documents have not been updated for changes in the law. That particular firm is not up on all the changes in the law. That is a risk that you could be a victim of word processing. We've talked about process ad nauseum, but that's a risk if you do estate planning with no process. A risk of doing estate planning with no partnership. Let's talk about that for just a second. Good estate planning or good lawyer-client relationships are partnerships. So when an attorney is working with a client and when a client is working with an attorney, there needs to be a good relationship, a partnership type relationship where it's good for both people, good for both the attorney and the law firm, good for the client, working together for solutions to solve problems. Because why else would there be a relationship? Clients have problems that need to be solved. Attorneys are supposed to counsel and advise and help solve problems. That is the good partnership that needs to exist, okay? Not having a collaborative team. You see that I've put an asterisk beside this. This is one of the major things that we're going to talk about today because we live in a complex world. So we live in a complex world that's constantly changing. Many of you are reeling from the changes that have happened just since January. We are going to see continued change in the world, regardless of the administration in Washington, whether it's on the left or right. We're still going to see many changes over time. So you want to have a collaborative team where you have tax knowledge, financial advisory knowledge, legal knowledge, life insurance planning knowledge, and possibly long-term care knowledge or other specialists. And then one of the big risks is no updating. So we know the average person doesn't update for almost 20 years at a time. And those are the good people. Those are the people that are on good behavior, so to speak. They did their estate planning and now they're properly updating. Well, they should have, I should say, properly updated, but they didn't. So they have planning, they did not do updating. So now every 19 or 20 years, they come back for updating or maybe never. And that is a risk. So things change, documents change, tax laws change, all around us, the world is shifting. We want to do updating. Now, here are further risks. Attorney has a lack of experience in estate planning. So this could be a general practitioner. I think this one speaks for itself. That is a risk. Transactional process, that's a risk. No partnership, no education, no fiduciary education, no outreach to the family. Now, this is a big one, this next one. No alignment of assets. So what I mean by that is this could be a risk even if you just have a will-based plan. If you have a will-based plan, what are the steps? Well, you have to design the will, You have to design your incapacity planning documents, and you have to provide for beneficiary designations properly. So your retirement type assets and life insurance type assets or annuities, the beneficiaries are flowing properly with the will-based plan. Without that, we have possible failure of the plan because many of you are putting a lot of money into retirement plans and life insurance. With a revocable trust plan, we might have an empty or partially empty revocable trust that is not funded properly, or with poor beneficiary designations or wrong beneficiary designations, or, and this one hurts, I'm going to throw this one out now, this one could hurt a little, using transferable on death designations to substitute for an estate plan. That is not a prudent way to do estate planning because it is a point A to point B transaction of the money with no consideration of other potential risks in life. So we want to revisit, we want to step back from this, and we want to look at these risks. I have seen entire estate plans thwarted because a well-meaning financial advisor retitled all the assets as transferable on death, the non-retirement assets. That is a mistake unless it is very intentional on the part of the client. Okay, enough about that. Obviously, the uninformed client is a risk. That's a risk to themselves or to yourself. Weak or inadequate documents. This gets back to using transactional or word processing documents that are not updated. Lack of overall scope in the plan. A one-dimensional approach where there's no discussion of fiduciary choices, trustee selection, asset protection, veterans planning. Do we have any kind of special needs loved ones down the line? And if we do, what about other people who might leave assets to those loved ones? And we could go on and on. And we talked about incapacity planning. This is a potential risk. Marital planning is a risk. We didn't intend to leave everything outright to surviving spouses, or maybe we did. Or if we don't leave everything outright, do we leave everything to the marital share versus the non-marital share? And do we understand why we're doing that and what the purposes are? Are we trying to protect the surviving spouse from creditors? Are we trying to protect against remarriage and all of those risks? So these are a few risks. I've encouraged you to write down your own, and hopefully this gives you a good lay of the land for where we're going here. Now, even though I just said we're kind of wrapping that up, here are more risks. Asset protection risks. So we have risk of leaving assets unprotected where we maybe should have. Maybe we should have planned to protect from divorce, car accidents, bankruptcy. Risks of tax implications. I met with a client yesterday and they were intrigued about asset protection for their children, but that wasn't really the driving force. There were tax implications to whether the assets were left outright to the children or whether they would be held in further trust where Uncle Sam would never be able to tax those assets again. So these are risks that must be talked about. Elder care risks, this goes without saying. Protecting assets from elder abuse, making sure that assets are preserved, making sure that family can pay for long-term care. Special needs planning, healthcare decisions, the strength of fiduciaries. Let's skip down to that bullet point. This is a big issue. Who are my agents? Who are my trustees? Who are my personal representatives? Who are the potential guardians for my children or adult special needs child? These are issues that should not just be, I'm going to set this choice and I'm going to leave it. No. That's a risk. We want to set those people and then revisit every several years or even every couple of years. The storage and access of documents and digital assets. This is a conversation. Where will the documents be? Will they be accessible? How will my loved one access my digital assets? And then a big one is flexibility. Today, the watchword in planning, as many of you know from watching webinars for Elville and Associates or others, flexibility is key. Not everybody has the luxury of providing for flexibility, but if you can, if you're comfortable with it, it is the way to go. Now, I know this is something that we've already gone into the weeds about. You're doing well. Grab that cup of coffee, look outside your window to the blossoming trees, take a deep breath. This is heavy stuff. Thank you for staying with us. All estate planning is goal driven. Okay, you need to know what you want. And as you get older, this could change. Or as you sit through counseling with a good estate planning attorney who's going to draw this information out of you or give you ideas that may cause you to have an epiphany. Know what you want, and there is where you're headed, okay? Estate planning takes commitment. We've talked about that for the last 15 or 20 minutes. It's an uphill climb. Estate planning should be a partnership. And if you're not dealing with a law firm that allows you to have that partnership, then that's not totally in your control and you might have to move on. Estate planning requires some endurance. So yes, if we're going to get into that list of 15 or 20 things that I rattled off at the beginning of this presentation, that's going to take some endurance on your part, right? That's not easy stuff to talk about. So congratulations to you that you're the kind of person that is willing to think about these things. And lastly, on this particular slide, I would offer that even if it's hard, and even if it takes this endurance, which is not easy, the world is negative enough, the world is difficult enough, I think estate planning on some level is, or maybe a large level, is driven by the concept of love. Your love for your own legacy first, taking care of yourself first, I'm going to argue, which most of you don't. Number two, I'm going to argue that the love for your spouse, if you're married, or your significant other, or the family members, seeing your grandchildren thrive, your children thrive. Estate planning is driven by love, let's face it. And I congratulate you for your commitment to care so much that you would attend. Now, how do we avoid estate planning failure? Well, obviously, we begin with a purpose. We begin with a purpose. We shun the idea of randomness. Again, we're going to talk about those two major words at the end. Those are going to sum up everything. So be thinking about that. We want to begin with the end in mind. The process is what we want. Design, spending a lot of time in design, understanding through education what is available to you, working with that collaborative team, which we're going to talk about again in a minute. But that's the process. And now, at our final passing, our plan will actually work the way we wanted, because we began with that process in mind. That was where we were. And in that process, we had partnership, we had education, we had legal technical solutions that were leading edge. They were leading edge. Why? Because you have to be. You have to be leading edge these days, or you are nowhere. You're random, or you're going to have a less than satisfying outcome. Again, let's go back to simplicity, or maybe not again. Let's talk about simplicity. Is simplicity wrong? Is keeping things simple wrong? The answer is absolutely not. It's not wrong, as long as you're being intentional about keeping it simple. Someone says to me, Steve, I just want to keep it simple. I now ask a few questions. What is simple? What is simple to you, right? I want to be simple, but yes, I do want to avoid probate. Or yes, I want to be simple, but yes, I do want to preserve assets. Or I want to be simple, but yes, I do need further trust planning for my spouse and my child. See, simple has relative meaning to people. So we want to be leading edge, and if we're going to be very simple, we at least want to be educated about it. Funding and alignment. You want to work with an estate planning firm that has a coordinator that makes sure that even though funding, or what we call asset alignment, even though that is your responsibility, the American Bar Association tells us as lawyers that we do not have any responsibility for what happens to a client's asset alignment with their estate plan. So when you think about that, that's a little bit shocking, but that makes sense because no third party can be responsible for how you title your own assets or how you beneficiary designate those assets. But we want to make best efforts, and you should be working with an estate planning firm that has an asset alignment coordinator to help you make sure the funding or asset alignment is correct. You also want to work with a firm that offers a maintenance and updating program. Yuck, who wants to maintain and update? Unless there are some people out there that love to work on things, love to work on cars or vehicles, and do their own maintenance. Well, not many people love to do that, but in estate planning, that is what we need to do. And then you want to work with an estate planning firm that has a succession plan to make sure that when the principal owners or during your lifetime, things change over time with all people, including law firms, that there is a succession and your children or grandchildren have resources and they know where to get those resources. It's important to remember that your file as a client is not owned by any law firm. When and if you ever need to get your file, that law firm has to turn that file over to you, and after your passing, your loved ones or your fiduciaries would have access to your file if they needed it to be able to do the administration and so forth. Even though some of the information is privileged, my point is that no law firm owns files. Let's talk about maintenance and updating. We have a client care program here at Elville and Associates that I'm proud of. And we, several years ago, went to the Client Care Academy in Boston by Vincent Bonazzoli, who runs that. And we made the investment in learning how to take care of clients at a high level. This encourages clients, it educates clients. It's really meant, even though we have a lot of fun at our client care program events and our social event, it's really meant to encourage clients to update. That's really all it is. And we want to make sure that children are educated, that we're all having a good time, because this information is heavy, but we want to make sure we're updating and that the plan will actually work over time. We collaborate with financial advisors for you and your insurance professionals and CPAs. Events that we've talked about in recent times, income tax proposals, the Secure Act. Just about a week or two ago, I guess 2 weeks ago now, Jeff, we had our client care event at Anne Arundel Community College, and we had more than 80 people there. And we talked about how to deal with changes over time, because there are new flexibility measures that can be in place over a long period of time. These are advanced laws that have taken place over the last 3 to 5 years. And we challenged people to think long-term about understanding whether they wanted to opt in or opt out of some of these long-term flexibility measures that are now available that most people are not completely aware of. So that was an interesting thing. And then Gary Greenwald talked about estate administration and the nuances of that. So we had a good time 2 weeks ago. Just know that updating is important. It's an important part of eliminating randomness, and that's what we're doing here. And Gary Greenwald, who is my colleague, he also has a client care program. Now, Jeff, I'm going to stop for just a second to take a drink, but I know this is a little bit of a heavy lift to talk about on a Friday morning, but do we have any comments or anything, Jeff, before I launch into the latter part of the presentation?
Thanks, Steve. Just had a couple come in a moment ago, so good timing. So first question is, if you only have cash in financial institutions, no property or possessions, is estate planning necessary?
That's a great question. I would, just for purposes, thank you very much for that, by the way. This is really one of the cutting edge questions, really. I would answer by saying this. If you have concerns, it doesn't really matter how your assets are. In other words, you're saying you have cash. This person over here might say they have some brokerage accounts or some IRAs or whatever. The question is, when you pass away, we'll talk about that first, is how do you leave this down the line? Who are your beneficiaries? How do you wish for them to receive this money? What's happening in their lives? Are they young? Are they old? Are they disabled? Are they minors? Or are they doing extremely well? Are they married? Is the marriage good? These are all the different things that would affect whether or not you would use a will or a trust to drive those assets down the line to your loved ones. Now, every once in a while, and I would say it's probably only one person out of every 100 or one person out of every 250, whatever that statistic is, that approach, let's say, of a very simple payable on death or transferable on death disposition of money straight from point A to point B, maybe only one person out of 100 that works for, or one person out of 200. Most people, however, want to plan for flexibility. What happens if this happens? What happens if I died, but the person I was leaving money to, they suddenly died right before me? It's probably not going to happen. These kinds of really weird things are probably not going to happen, unexpected things, but they can happen, and that's why we're talking about planning for certainty. So I would say, based on your own particular circumstances, you may be that one person out of 100 or 200 that does not need a will, but most people want to control how everything flows down. The second aspect of that really goes back to your lifetime. So regardless of whether you have cash or this is your investment or real estate, you're going to want to be thinking about your own self-determination and having that power of attorney advance directive situation where you design those, what if I can't make my own decision? So two aspects, what happens during life, what happens at death. Jeff, what's the next question?
Thanks, Steve. Will having a trust and let's try to rephrase this. Will having a trust and will keep everything from going through probate?
That's a wonderful question. Thank you. If you have a will by its very nature will go through probate, but you may have no probate assets. So if you have retirement plans with beneficiaries, life insurance with beneficiaries, and you had a joint account with someone, you would have no probate, even though you have a will. But if you have a will and you have typical probate assets, like you have a bank account in your name, a brokerage account in your name, a house in your name with no beneficiary and no joint owner, you would have probate. If you have a revocable trust and a revocable trust is properly funded, in other words, the first step is to create the trust. The second step is to make sure the assets that are non-retirement assets are in the trust. If you do that, then you will have no probate there either. So it's really a question of probate, generally speaking, with a will, or no probate with a proper trust. That trust has to be properly done. All right, Jeff, what do we have next?
That's it for now. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Jeff. All right, so it's about 11:15, and I know this has been a little bit of a deep slog, so we're going to keep going. Now we're going to get to the advisory team. Do you have an advisory team? Now, many of you do. Many of you have a financial advisor, an estate planning attorney, a CPA. If you do, I say congratulations, okay? But I'm going to ask you, if you don't have one, of course, you need one, but we're going to talk about that. But for those of you who have a good advisory team, so to speak, I'm going to ask you to kind of test yourself here, okay? So let's get into the good things about having this advisory team. You've got a team in place, okay? These are the good things. That's great. That means you're leading edge if you have this. Your team is competent, okay? You want to just make sure, double check yourself. Do I feel that my team is competent, right? You can only trust the professionals that you have confidence in. Now, here's the big one, and we're really setting the bar high now. It's like an Olympic high jump, right? We're increasing the bar, okay? The team communicates. So does your team communicate with you? Or is it just individuals that communicate with you? In other words, do you remember that there has ever been a team meeting of your team? And do they know one another? Or are they all just unilateral actors? They all just communicate with you unilaterally. Your assets have been reviewed and evaluated by the whole team, whether it's just a 15-minute phone call. I know these things are difficult, but remember, we're setting the bar high. Your team knows your family members, and have they been a part of a family meeting? Or is it just like Elville and Associates, we do a family meeting and nobody else is involved many times except family members, not the other advisors, okay? Has the team collaborated and really kind of agreed on things? Now, everyone in this planning team has a specialty, tax, financial, legal, but we're not asking them to weigh in on things that they don't have expertise in. We're really just asking them to generally agree that everybody kind of is going in the same direction. And here's a big one. Do you have the assurance that the team will be collaborating not only now, but in the future when you are no longer here? So we're setting the bar high. We're asking you, hey, you should probably expect of your team that they will meet for 10 or 15 minutes to discuss your family, and actually meet your kids. Many of them obviously want, and many of you want, that your financial advisors will continue to manage your assets after you're gone. And this is a good way of doing it, is to make sure the family meets them. What's the bad thing? Well, I have no advisory team in place. Not good, okay? Now, with that said, many of you have been successful. You've been successful investors. Congratulations to you. There's no question. You have done a great job. You may be a person who does not want a financial advisor or a team, but generally speaking, right, this is not a good thing, that you're kind of an island. So I want you to think about that. You have one of the team members maybe, but not others. Or you have a feeling that one of your team members is kind of lacking in competence, and you've kind of been going along with that, but you're not really at the highest level. So that's not good, because in today's world, you can have people that you have a lot of confidence in. And let's say your team does not communicate with one another. You have these people in place, but they've never talked to one another, and you know it. That's probably not the highest and best thing, especially when you're trying to have certainty about your estate plan. Your assets have not been reviewed and evaluated by the team together. The team doesn't know your family members. The team hasn't collaborated. You have no real assurance. Maybe you never thought about it, but you have no real assurance this team will continue to collaborate in the future. And who in the world is, who's running this team, right? And so I'm going to ask you, okay, are you the quarterback of your own team? And some people are better than others at that. Or maybe you would say to your attorney or financial advisor or CPA, I want you to be the quarterback, okay? But my point is, you have the right to expect this. We live in a world of service. These are service-oriented professionals. You have the right to have a collaborative team and expect that they are going to collaborate. Worst part, in a bad scenario, you are not aware of the dangers and problems of this non-collaboration. How many times do you get on a webinar or talk to a friend and you find out something that you did not know? I was sitting with clients just this week. We talked about certain issues with certain clients. I was kind of surprised that some of the clients had no idea that certain things had happened and that certain tax issues are happening. So for example, right now, not to change the subject, but we are worried about the Maryland estate tax exemption and the legislation in the General Assembly right now that very well may reduce the Maryland estate tax exemption from $5 million per person down to $2 million per person. So this kind of non-collaboration or not making you aware of things, and hopefully that won't happen, but we think it will, this is the thing that could come back to bite you, that you never had a collaborative team, and even if you did, they aren't communicating or they did not make you aware of issues. This is what we want to avoid random outcomes. So what do you really want? And I don't want to be here this morning telling you what you want, but this is in a rhetorical sense, in a very broad sense. This is what I know you would want. You would want to know that everything is going to be fine. And I'm not trying to be just ridiculous there. You want to know that you've done the highest and best thing. I know you do. And you want to know that that's going to be fine if you were no longer here tomorrow or you became incapacitated. You want to know that your spouse and child or children will be taken care of, or your significant other, or your nieces and nephews, whatever your situation may be. I would go as far as to say you want to know that your charitable planning is going to work perfectly, whatever your goal is. You want to know that planning will work just like you said it should in your estate planning document. You don't want your planning to go off the rails after you die. You don't want someone not carrying out your wishes after you die. That can actually happen. And that can happen even with trusts. That can happen, and especially with trusts. You want to make sure and have certainty. You want to make sure spouses and children will be protected, or significant others. You want to make sure that all tax-related issues are handled. You want to make sure that your assets will be sufficient. Now, this is another issue. Do you have sufficient liquidity, right? Should you be using life insurance as a tool to create liquidity, or to deal with the Secure Act, or to deal with the Maryland estate tax issues that may arise in the future, or the federal estate tax issues? Do you want an advisory team that works together? Yes, you want to know that that advisory or collaborative team will work together. This is what you want. I know you do. This is your expectation. This webinar is about encouraging you to expect the best, strive for perfection, and in the process, get where you want to go from point A to point B. This is an important slide right here. So what is an advisory team's strengths and challenges? Well, the strengths are, there's collective knowledge, there's collective resources. I mean, this goes without saying. The resources that are available to clients today are unbelievable. It's a matter of accepting this and making yourself available to it. The collective experience, boy, that's a big one. Collective experience, collective ability to solve problems. You know, when you think about the collective experience of professionals like we're talking about here, I would say a lot of professionals have a lot of ability, but the question is, are they willing to go the extra mile? I saw a situation just recently that's still ongoing where there was a mistake. There was a financial advisory firm that was really handling a 401k at a distance, and they didn't do the right thing, even though they were instructed over and over to do a certain thing. But the wonderful thing about it is they are showing a great willingness to correct the problem, and they are really doing a great job doing that. So it's a lot of this problem solving is about willingness. You want to deal with people who are willing to go the extra mile. Collective desire to be at the highest levels of performance. Your advisors, they are in a service business. They want the top advisors, the top attorneys, the top CPAs. They want to perform at a high level to be able to proliferate their practices. That's who you want to deal with. They want to perpetuate relationships with your family members. And of course, they have a collective goal of not only taking care of you and your family, but to enhance their own reputations and legacies. Now, what are some of the weaknesses? Well, again, lack of willingness, failure to recognize what people want. I had an experience the other day. I was working with some loved ones, and it had to do with real estate. And I was talking to someone, and I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but I just felt the person wasn't listening. You know, you could very much tell that person wasn't listening. And this went on for 2 or 3 days. And finally, I just had to say, you know, I don't think you're listening. I had to bring this to their attention. And thank goodness that problem has been resolved. But if someone's not listening to you, you know that. That is a sign that you're going off the rails. So you do not have to have that as part of your planning process. Failure to imagine, using imagination or resources. Fear of breach of good faith and professional courtesy, okay? There are sometimes professionals that are afraid to go the extra mile. They're afraid to get out of their lane. But I'm just going to argue that can be very limiting. Failure to have appropriate resources. Maybe they don't have enough support. Failure to understand ramifications, failure to communicate, failure to verify and really wrap up loose end details. These are things that you should be able to expect and not even think about with a good financial advisory team. Now, how does a client suffer? And we're starting to wrap up. Well, your planning won't work as intended if you don't have this kind of advice, or you don't wrap up those issues yourself. Your intentions could be thwarted. They're off the rails. They fail. Family conflict could happen, right? We could have planned in a certain way, or we could have brought people together, but we didn't, and family conflict happens. There are unexpected tax issues. Boy, doesn't this happen. I saw a situation where a huge estate tax was triggered because of the failure of a particular professional to deal with things correctly at another law firm. At-risk beneficiaries are not protected. Family resources are lost or compromised. Flexibility is lost. Sometimes the biggest risk is that bad planning or non-collaborative planning, flexibility is lost. Long-term benefits that could have been had are irretrievably lost. And of course, sometimes when failure occurs, okay, even through luck, thank goodness, sometimes assets pass without injury to family members, but who would want to take that chance, right? I know you would not. So goals and intentions that were designed to happen are not happening because of a failure. It's like a train moving down the station or down the line, and all of a sudden it goes off the tracks because of something that wasn't maintained. So again, these are fundamental issues. I know I'm preaching to many of you who are very diligent, but for those of you who have never heard this, I want you to start thinking about the diligence that is necessary to achieve success in planning. Now, how do we avoid these things? Well, we want to ensure that we have an advisory team and insist at the highest levels that they are going to provide those kinds of services. Schedule a meeting. Had a team meeting, make sure they're evaluating assets, make sure they're evaluating tax structures, make sure they're evaluating the nature of your planning. Ensure that they are collaborating and that they have basically agreed in concept about what is happening in your planning. Ensure that the team knows about your family members and actually meets them at a family meeting. And we want to make sure that you have the emotional encouragement, the emotional positive feeling that this is actually going in the right direction, because estate planning is emotional, as many of you know. It's about love, it's about emotions, it's not just all about taxes, it's how you feel about it. And I think that that feeling should guide you, not only to verify, of course, but to also feel in your heart that you feel your planning is in good hands, going in the right direction.
Hey, Steve, can we pause for a quick question?
Yes.
So, question is, the team idea sounds wonderful. How frequently do these occur? And I'm concerned these meetings would be expensive.
Well, thank you for that. So I will just argue that yes, having a team is more expensive than not having a team. I would say that collaborative team meetings among all advisors are very rare. And that's why that I'm bringing it up in this presentation as an ideal. These are ideal things to do, right? Many people have collaborative teams that never meet, or maybe they share an email once or twice over a period of years, but there really is no collaboration. So I agree with you. But if you're paying a fee advisory service, let's say like your financial advisors, maybe it's not going to cost any more to have that financial advisor be a part of a call. With your partnership relationship with a law firm such as Elville and Associates, it would not cost extra to have that meeting if you were part of a client care program, for example. And with regards to CPAs, of course, maybe they would bill for their time. So it's not a moot point for sure that you're bringing up. It is clearly an important question, but I would say this is really kind of the ideal world that you want to be in. But in all honesty, this does not happen. This presentation is presenting a pretty high bar that we're recommending, even though it could cost more, that's for sure. And your question is valid.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Jeff. So as we start to wrap up, and I know time is very short, knowledge is only potential power, remember. So we want to have a process and use that knowledge. We want to collaborate, and that's where power is. Knowledge to know what to do is only potential power, okay? Documents are important, but it's just one aspect. Documents are just a stack of paper. Are they important? Yes, but they are part of an overall collaboration, okay? An estate planning attorney, to help someone really succeed in planning, in our opinion, with all the complexities that are in the world today, we want to provide a straightforward path, leading edge technical knowledge, a willingness to apply that knowledge, a willingness to deliver a process that the client can participate in, a willingness to provide education and care, and longevity and succession. So we want you to have confidence in a law firm or in a process where you and your family can solve problems over a long period of time and attain your goals. Again, this is an uphill climb throughout life, and we're almost done, I promise, in the presentation. Power in estate planning equals eliminating randomness, getting rid of a lack of process through being intentional, eliminating a focus on documents. This is a little bit of an extension of what we just talked about. The documents are important, but that's not all there is to planning. We want to have a commitment on the part of a client to engage in a process as part of a life process. We want a commitment on the part of the attorney and, of course, the collaborative team to help clients succeed. We want to have a process before, during, and after estate planning. We want to have client care as part of a maintenance and updating program. And we want continuous updating, legal education, and staying abreast of change. And those of you on this webinar this morning, you are the kind of person or couple that is demonstrating that you have the willingness to do that kind of thing. So you can do it, and that's my message to you this morning. And as we start to wrap up, and we're just slightly past 11 o'clock, but we're still within about an hour of my presentation, I just want to encourage you to start the process of planning towards achieving perfection. The idea is to start. The idea is to move forward. If you have no planning, we want to talk to you about that planning. We use our conference rooms as a place where you can be and have time to think, which we'll get to in just a second. We want to have a consultation. Most of our consultations are at no charge for estate planning. We review existing documents, if you have existing documents, at no charge, generally speaking. We want you to complete a questionnaire so we can learn more about you. We want to see your questions. We want to encourage you, and thank you for those of you this morning who asked questions. We want you to relax, because estate planning, there's really nothing to fear, as strange as it is to come in and talk to someone you don't know and share all this personal information. Remember, there's an attorney-client relationship that attaches if you come and talk to an attorney about estate planning. And even if you don't become a client, there is an attorney-client relationship, and everything is confidential. We want to help you have an advisory team if you don't already have one, or if you need a replacement team member, we want to give you recommendations or help you as you search for the replacement. And as I mentioned, we want to give you time to think. So we are here to give you time to think, especially in the aftermath of COVID, when people have so many questions, so many concerns, all the things that are happening in the world today, environmentally, taxation-wise, politically, all the things that are happening in this country and around the world. We're here to answer and help provide questions and help you attain your goal. You may not know what you want, but we want to help you provide a path forward so you can have epiphanies about what you want. And many of you, of course, we know you do know what you want, and that's going to help you in your path towards achieving perfection and being intentional. And Jeff, before we go, I'm just going to say, or before I turn it over to you, I'm going to say I'm ready now to reveal the two words that I think are the most important thing possibly in this particular uphill climb that we call being intentional and achieving perfection in a planning. How would you like me to handle that, Jeff? Do you want to ask anyone if they have any guesses about what this would be?
Anybody has some thoughts? Very open to put it in the chat or in the questions panel there. You can read them off.
I'll give you a clue. These are words that start with the same letters as my initials, and they're also non-technical terms.
I'm racking my brain, Steve.
All right. Well, in the interest of time, I'll go ahead and just tell you. Well, my first name is Steve, so I'm going to use the word sincerity. Sincerity of effort. So if you take this information today and you sincerely make an effort, and that's my last name, Elville, with an E. So sincerity and effort. If you put sincerity in your approach to your estate planning, and you're willing to make a continuous effort towards maintaining your estate planning and really being very intentional about this, because so many variables exist that can take us in different directions and cause our planning not to work the way we might want it to work ideally. If you use those two words, sincerity and effort, continuous effort, which may be another way of saying continuous maintenance and updating and being intentional, then I think you've gotten the gist of what this is all about today. So thank you for all of your attention and hanging in there with me. I hope you were able to go away with something substantive. And Jeff, I'll turn it back to you and wish everyone a happy weekend.
Well, thanks, Steve. We're up against the clock here. I just want to say real quick that I was on a webinar with Victoria Hathaway, who's a friend of the firm, and a lot of people know her, director of the Silver Group in Howard County and Howard County Commission on Aging. She was doing a presentation with me yesterday, and she specifically, it was about housing options as people age. And I kind of laughed a little bit to myself because she said through part of her presentation at the end, it's important to be very intentional in what you're doing when you're looking at different housing options. So I thought of our presentation and you today. And also the last thing she said was, it's important that you take time to think about these issues. And it's like, she must have listened to all of our presentations, because that's how we end all of our presentations. And no matter what you're doing, whether it's estate planning or another important matter, I think this kind of translates over to other areas of life. So, well, thank you very much, Steve. If you have questions or concerns about your current plan, or you need to get started, certainly reach out to Steve and me, and we'll be happy to set a time for you to come visit us. I always send out the video, our slides again, and some other information Steve referenced in the presentation. I'll do that this afternoon. And we have a lot of events and webinars coming up in April. I'll send that out as well as a link to that. And so really wish you a happy Friday. Thanks for being here and for your interest in Elville and Associates and being intentional with your estate planning, and hope you have a great Friday and weekend.
Thank you, everyone.